Hey everybody, it's your local idiot here. I had a tiny little thought. Decided I'd share it with you. Sorry about that. So first off, I have a cold. It's middle of September. In fact, today I know the date. It's the 15th. Weird. I'm in a job transition, and now that I'm in a job transition, I don't know the date usually, which is funny. I can tell what time of day it is by looking outside and it's light. And then I remember I have a wristwatch, so that helps that too. I have bad close-up eyes though, and so I have to wear glasses if I want to see something close up that's small. So on my watch there actually is a date, but I have to bother to put on my glasses to tell what the date is, and that tells you how lazy I am. When I don't know the date, it's just because I simply haven't looked at my wrist to see it, and it's not really annoying. I'm self-aware enough to know at my age now that I'm naturally pretty lazy. My dad used to tell me when I was a kid, when we'd be working together or something, he would always say, if you have a crew of guys or if you're in charge of a bunch of people that work for you, always hire a lazy guy, because he'll always figure out the easiest way to do everything. It'll be natural to him. And so if you have a group of guys that you're trying to direct to do something, look over at the lazy guy and say, what do you think? And then he'll pop out with the most efficient way to do anything. And then you look at the guys that aren't lazy and say, okay, let's go and do that. And the lazy guy, you got to give him some incentive to still be there. So put him on something, but not too much, because he's going to get obviously way tired of that and go find an easier job somewhere else. So anyway, so today I'm trying to mess around and I'm going to do the YouTube thing, not just YouTube, but any of those channels, where you talk to a video and then post it at some point, as a hobby, okay? Because I've got other irons in the fire, but this whole not having a job thing and stuff, and where I'm kind of getting creative and entrepreneurial, and I came up with the first thing. Now that was a long time in the planning, like a year. The second thing just sort of fell out of one of my ears, and I'm like, oh, look at that. And then, but part of that is that since I don't have a job and stuff like that, and I don't have a lot of really big time responsibility, my brain has done this, it's lack of stimulus thing. And so I'm suddenly getting creative without even thinking about it. I mean, I wake up in the morning like, yeah, I must have thought of that last night in a dream or something. And then boop, it comes out. So anyway, one of the things that has really been kind of bugging me in the back of my mind for a while now is wanting to do the YouTube type stuff. So I finally got around to being more than just curious, and now I'm starting to kind of formulate how I would do it. I'm not in the remotest way interested in make money off of a YouTube channel. Now, I'm not saying I wouldn't say yes to something like that, but I haven't started planning for something like that at all, like sponsorships or any of that kind of stuff. And I have an MBA, so I get how that works, and stuff, but it's just, I've learned over time, beware of making your hobbies into an income type of thing. You can ruin a good hobby that way. I always feel bad for professional athletes, because certainly they started out as kids loving the sport that they're in. And some of them love every sport, like look at, Bo Jackson type thing or whatever. And then the instant they become really good at it and they make a name for themselves, and then coaches are kind of like relying on them to sort of keep their job and stuff. And then eventually they're making money off of it and stuff. There's so much pressure on that they end up taking this thing that they used to absolutely love. It was the air in their lungs, and they ruin it for themselves, where that pretty soon they straight up hate it, and then what do you do after that? How do you change? You become a ping pong, person or whatever. I have no idea. How do you take that love and then ruin it? And then what do you do after that? Anyway, so I'm not gonna worry about the YouTube thing. For me, is just fun, but I'm also one of those idiots that I don't really see money the same way most people do. It's my dad's fault. my dad used to make really good money as a union electrician, and in an elevator union. So he worked on elevators my most of my life, and I don't. And that's another thing. I have dropped my computer many, many, many times. Imagine taking your laptop and dropping it on the concrete. I wonder how well it'd work after that. I mean, besides just having to figure out how to put the buttons back in, and stuff. It just makes me wonder how many of the chips inside and stuff like that are now loose or whatever. I used to box and other ridiculous stuff. Like, anything you can do to hurt yourself, I've done pretty much. And always just for fun. And I've had the last official count, I believe, was 27 actual concussions, where that a doctor somewhere, like at an emergency room or something like that, said, yeah, you were concussed. And so at one time I had a literal file of all these visits, doctor's visits. And it was, over time, it was one of the interesting things. After years of doing all this kind of stuff, I went over the bills on those, and it was unbelievable. Now, this is since the 80s, since 80s, 90s, early 2000s. And I think I lost track of that around 2010. And so, but 27 concussions in that time. It does not surprise me at all that my train of thought leaves the station on a regular basis. So, anyway, so I'm going to do the YouTube thing. So here's the deal. Yeah, there's all kinds of AI I could ask questions of and stuff like that, but that's just really impersonal. Anybody that watches a lot of, YouTube or TikTok or any of that kind of stuff, if you have suggestions about little techniques that you've noticed or that you've learned, or if you've done it yourself at all and that you've learned over time or whatever, please let me know. I'm not going to take anybody's spot, on the internet, because I'm just doing what I do. I've got no hook, I've got no, some people, one of the people I really like to watch is this Alice Winterholt. And she's a British kid that, and I say kid, she's an adult, but she's a kid to me. She basically is documenting her pretty severe anxiety disorder, acrophobia, and what it's like to live in the skin of a person dealing with that. I think luckily she has been able to make a living off of posting these videos, and which is great, because I just don't think that girl could work at a regular place without killing everybody in the joint. So that's how shootings happen at work and stuff like that, where people that shouldn't work at a place they force themselves, or they are forced to, and then somehow those same people are allowed to buy an AK-47. Probably not a good thing, But anyway, that's an American problem, not a British problem. She is British. She wisely moved to a smaller town and everything, and then she just documents her days. She's actually a very smart person. But every person that I've ever met with real anxiety issues, for whatever reason, happened to also be very smart. It's like autistic people. I've never met a stupid autistic person. Usually the autistic people I've ever met in my entire life, even before I knew the term autism or autistic or what it meant even, were incredibly intelligent. I have a cousin that I don't know if he'll ever see this, and I don't want him to know that I'm talking about him necessarily, but because I haven't asked his permission, so I won't say his name. He's actually one of the smartest people I've ever met. Now, I think he's autistic, but I don't know. I've not heard him tell anybody, or anybody told me or anything that they know of a diagnosis. He's just got some issues, One of his issues, which is still entertaining to me, is that he's a lot like I am. He expounds never-endingly on shit that he knows about, and then believes he knows more than he knows. And that's entertaining to listen to, because some of it gets pretty wild. But some of the stuff he's said over time has made me think, and kind of do my own little curiosity stuff, So yeah, he's incredibly intelligent, but he and he ought to probably do this, the video thing. He might make money at it, enough to have a living. But he's struggled his whole life because he can't work. He's wisely also doesn't have a normal job, and he has over time little things, but he's never been able to make a real go of it because he's just got too much going on that way. And I think he would have been one of those people that if pushed into a corner, he would react. And he's big as Bigfoot, so that's not a good thing for anybody to have, is a gigantic person near you that is reacting. I'm a runner when it comes to crazy people. I mean, I've never been afraid of fighting anybody. But like Muhammad Ali said, when a reporter asked him, what would you do if a crazy person jumped out at you in the street and wanted to fight? He says, everybody knows who I am. If a person on the street wanted to fight me, they're obviously crazy. And he said, and I don't fight crazy people. That's me. The only times I've been really tough in my life is when I've lost my shit. Out of fear, usually. Enough to know I'm not going to be on the other end of that stick. If somebody that was like that started to react on me, I would just run. I'm a lot faster than I seem to be when I'm scared. They're like, what was that just jumped over that privacy fence? I barely saw this blur of that guy. It was like Steve Underwood scared, I guess. Okay, fine. That's it. But no, I just like to talk. And the thing is, everybody that's ever met me right now, if they were watching this video, will be shaking their head with their eyes closed, thinking, yeah, he likes to talk. I'm a talker. Now, I'm not a blabber. Like if somebody told me a secret, I ain't telling. If the government, I had a really high, when I was in the military, I had a TSSCI clearance, and it was because of my particular job, where that in the signal node, because I was a signal person, I would have the ability to listen to any conversation happening, even from the the command center or whatever, to somebody way in the rear, like a general or something like that, talking about tactics. And it had nothing to do with the fact that I was a 007 or something like that. I was a technical person. And so one of the ways that my particular job was able to improve the signal, the sound that people were trying to communicate, so it wasn't staticky and breaking up and all that crap, was that I could get on that particular line that they were on right then, and I could look at their signal through an oscilloscope and things, and I could see what was going on, and I could actually get a hold of different people in the signal node, everybody from the guys that ran the wire, we called cable dogs, to everybody. And I could say, hey, do this to fix this problem. And you had to have the clearance, though, because you never know who was talking about what. And that was in the combat side of my job. In the peacetime side of my job, we could do the exact same thing, but to civilian lines and everything else. When I first started doing that, to impress upon me and the other new guys, this Spec 4 specialist guy who is a E4 mafia shithead, placed a call we were in a very small box that's on the back of a truck. And it was somebody did it to him, and it impressed me, I'm sure, the same way it impressed him. He made a phone call, basically, and he mapped it out right in front of us on a dry erase board where it was going to go, and it was like a circumnavigate the world, literally go around the world. And then come back, and it rang on a different phone in that box. Now, this is during the 80s, and so it was all analog. It wasn't digital. So it was quite impressive. He would basically hijack all these phone systems to literally go around the world and then call ourselves, And the idea was that way. He said, I can do this because our job is to make sure that all these systems work properly, so that that people could use them. Now, we didn't care at all about the civilian world or whatever. We were making it so that anybody could call anybody in the military and listen in on the peacetime thing. It was to listen in for breaches of confidence, breaches of people passing along information they shouldn't be able to. And we had nothing to do with gathering information kind of stuff. Once in a while, we were kind of a watchdog for them, where we would have 4 or 5 things to listen for, that they physically didn't have enough intelligence people to simply just listen on the phone. But we did. Between them and us and some other things, we were the highest security clearance in the entire signal node. And so the idea is, being a blabbermouth, is I can tell you that stuff, but even though mine was in the 80s and there was nothing major in my particular job, we had to go through a class on basic formulation of code and what code looked like and how code worked, from old school to what our current was at the time. In the signal node, one of the jobs was what's called a decryption, or decryption people. And theirs was as close to being digital, and it probably actually was digital, as any of us were. And they had these things called K cards. And therein lies the digital for the late 80s Army signal node. And it was different. These literally looked like it was probably a circuit board inside of a little housing you plugged and unplugged, almost like a video game. And we were all informed, that had any idea what this was, that this is a target for Russian intelligence. And so, this is during the Cold War and stuff. And so they were like, keep your eye out. Anybody who doesn't have that job, who's too interested in that truck, that box we call them vans, on the back of this big 2.5 ton truck. Anybody who's too interested in that you don't know, stop them. And we want to know about them, that kind of thing. So my particular job wasn't really interesting, but there was an air of, it took them 3 months to do and I was 17. It took them 3 months to do my background check to qualify me for my job. I just felt bad for them once I figured out that that's what they were doing. I had people getting a hold of me and my family that I hadn't. There was a second grade teacher that wasn't even my second grade teacher, because my second grade teacher was dead. But it was the second grade teacher in the next room over. They contacted her to ask questions about me and what kind of a kid did I seem like and everything. Which I'm still, to this day, amazed I ever got that clearance, because teachers should have shot me down for sure. But they talked to my first girlfriend, who I was an idiot at that time. And at the time they're doing all this background check, I was only 17. They were talking to people from when I was 12 and stuff to find out what kind of a person I was. Yeah, America does not mess around about security clearances, and they still mess up. There are some things that your background check just cannot cover, or at least it couldn't at that time. Who knows what it is like now? I have no idea. But anyway, so I'm a talker, as you can tell from these videos, because I just go yada 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 yada. If they attach some kind of steel cutting devices to my teeth, I could run a sawmill. I'm sure I could, and that would just be without thinking about it, because that's how I do. My poor wife. My mom was like that too. My dad wasn't much of a talker at all. He would sit around, not because I don't know to this day. It might have been because he wasn't a talker. He just didn't feel like he wanted to talk much. But it also might have been because he couldn't get a word in edgewise. I don't know. But my mom was like I am. Yada da yada da yada da yada da. And it's worse when I've had caffeine. Hence now. When I wake up in the mornings, I'm not a talker at all. In fact, I own weapons, but they shouldn't be within eyesight when I first wake up, because you never know. You never know. I'm in a bad mood when I first wake up. Not aggressively or evil. I shouldn't say not evil. I don't know. Not aggressively, not violently, but not happily, you know. But I do have a coffee pot, and I put a timer on it. So when I first wake up, the first thing I notice is usually the smell of coffee wafting all the way from my downstairs kitchen to my upstairs bedroom, which makes it to where I can bleary-eyed get up, put on something to not flash the neighbors, and then go downstairs and make a cup of coffee. And within 20 minutes, I'm up. I'm good. You know, I can spell my name, that kind of stuff. Prior to that, I don't know. I've never tried it. Self-vanity, you know, I guess, you know, you just don't want to know what you're not capable of, I guess, for real. But, so how's everybody doing? You know? I mean, you got to be bored, clearly. You're on my stuff here, you know, the local idiot guy, that kind of thing. So here's the deal. Like I say, I'm not trying to make money. I'm not trying to be a success. I don't even know exactly what that would be here on the YouTube thing or whatever. But what I would appreciate is if anybody has any suggestions of what I should talk to, what I should or shouldn't do. My guess is making videos that are too long. That's a shouldn't, you know. Anything like that, please let me know. So I'm going to bail. I don't want this video to be as long as usual. Oftentimes without even realizing it, they're like an hour. So right now I've got like 22 minutes. And so I think I'm going to cut it right here. And I'm going to be back on a little later today when maybe the caffeine isn't so coursey through my veins. And perhaps I'll let you even think about what I'm saying as I'm saying it. I don't know. We'll see. So I have lots of even things that I've written down for myself that I should or shouldn't do for these videos. And I still don't really follow that, okay? But I'm going to get in the habit of it. So I'm going to improve your listening experience. It's my attempt anyway, my hope. But seriously, you might not even get to see most of my videos at this moment because I'm probably not getting them out there properly, you know, to get them in front of people. But if you happen to accidentally stumble upon my videos, forgive me, please. And so anyway, that's it. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'm sorry this video has stolen some of your IQ points. If you meditate, you probably can get them back, you know. So anyway, great luck to you, and sayonara.